Every man who has ever looked into a woman's eyes has stood at the edge of mystery itself. The pulse quickens, logic falters, and something ancient stirs. It is not merely attraction, it is recognition. Somewhere in that gaze lies the forgotten half of your own soul. You wish to decode her. Then you must be willing to decode the darkness that watches from within you. For every woman you meet carries two faces, the one she shows the world, and the one she guards in the silence of her being. Her weakness is not found in her emotions, but in the truths she dares not speak. Truths you too have buried beneath pride and fear. The first key is to see without judgment. Every defense, every act of coldness, every game of indifference, these are not barriers against love, but armor, forged from old wounds. To know her weakness is not to exploit it, but to understand what made her strong enough to hide it. The second key is the mirror. Whatever draws you to her or repels you within her is your reflection. The anger, the craving, the jealousy, they are your unconscious desires wearing her face. The wise man does not seek to conquer her. He seeks to recognize himself through her. The third key lies in energy, not words. A woman's communication begins where logic ends. Her silence can seduce more than her speech. Her glance can command more than any argument. Listen, not to her sentences, but to her pauses. The real message lives there. Then comes the paradox, the dance of power and surrender. Every woman secretly desires a man strong enough to lead, yet soft enough to understand her surrender is not defeat, but trust. When strength meets empathy, the polarity ignites something primal, the alchemy of attraction. But beware the illusion of control. The deeper truth is that you never decode her completely. She evolves, shifts, and mirrors the changes within you. The moment you think you own her mystery, she becomes another one. That is her power and your test. If you truly wish to awaken a woman's hidden side, awaken first your own forgotten depth. Dare to touch the chaos within yourself without fear. When a man meets his inner darkness, he becomes magnetic, because he no longer fears the darkness in her, and that is the ultimate secret. What you call her weakness is her portal to the divine feminine, the same force that destroys and creates worlds. Approach it with reverence, not conquest, for in decoding her you do not master her, you remember her, and when that remembrance happens, something transcendent is born, not man or woman, not power or weakness, but the union of shadow and light, the moment two souls recognize themselves in each other and whisper, "Finally, I see you." When you look at a woman, you do not merely see her. You awaken something in her, and something in yourself begins to stir in response. What most men fail to understand is that the woman before them is not only flesh and expression, but also a constellation of hidden impulses, archetypes, fears, and forgotten dreams. Beneath her smile lives an entire myth. You cannot touch her truth until you learn to perceive the secret life of her psyche, the shadow she hides, not because it is evil, but because the world has taught her to fear her own depths. Every woman carries a shadow self, the unexpressed emotions, the restrained desires, the wildness she has been told to tame. It is in this shadow that her real power, and yes, her real weakness resides. Society often demands that she be soft but not too soft, strong but not intimidating, sensual but only when permitted. And so she learns to create a mask, a version of herself that fits the expectations around her. But beneath that mask, the unspoken continues to live. It hums quietly in her gestures, in the way her eyes linger, in the subtle dissonance between her words and her energy. To decode a woman's weaknesses, one must first stop hunting for them. You cannot decode what you are trying to dominate. Understanding begins when you approach her like a mystery meant to be seen, not solved. Her shadow does not reveal itself to those who demand submission. It opens only to those who offer recognition. When a man meets a woman and senses the parts of her she hides, the parts afraid to want, afraid to be wanted, and instead of exploiting them, he holds space for them, something remarkable happens. Her guard begins to melt. The false strength she has used to protect herself dissolves, and in that surrender, you glimpse the unguarded truth of her being. That truth is her weakness, but it is also her doorway to authenticity. Psychologically speaking, the shadow of desire operates as a kind of mirror. Every woman's hidden self calls forth a corresponding reaction in you. If her repressed wildness makes you uneasy, It is because it reflects your own restrained instincts. If her unpredictability excites you, it is because it resonates with the chaos you secretly crave but cannot admit. The shadow does not lie, it only speaks in symbols. The art lies in learning to interpret them without judgment. Sexually, this dynamic is profound. Real attraction is not born from perfection. It emerges from polarity, from the meeting of conscious and unconscious energies. A woman's surface may be calm, but beneath it may live a storm of desire, longing for someone who can sense it without demanding it. The kind of man who does not chase her body, but invites her essence to reveal itself. When you can touch her psyche with understanding rather than pressure, she feels safe enough to expose the parts of herself she has long hidden, even from her own reflection. And this is where the deeper power lies. Every woman wants to feel seen, not observed but recognized. To be seen in her shadow is to be freed from the burden of performance. To be seen there is to be accepted for what she actually is, not what she has been trained to be. Her weakness is the place where her soul is most human, and her humanity is what connects her to you. But you cannot stand in that space unless you have met your own shadow first. Men often fear emotional depth because they fear losing control. They equate dominance with strength, but real strength is found in presence, the ability to remain still before intensity without needing to conquer it. When you can witness a woman's raw emotion, her contradiction, her vulnerability, and stay grounded, she feels it immediately. You become, in her eyes, not another man trying to fix her, but one capable of holding her truth without flinching. That is the kind of presence that dismantles defenses and invites surrender, not forced but chosen. Philosophically, the shadow of desire is a bridge between the human and the divine. It reminds us that love, sexuality, and consciousness are not separate realms. They are expressions of the same life force seeking integration. When a man meets a woman in this space, he does not merely experience attraction. He experiences transformation. Her shadow calls him to evolve, to confront his own hidden instincts and unhealed wounds. She becomes both the mirror and the muse, the test and the teacher. To decode her weakness, then, is not to find her flaw. It is to understand her duality, her need for safety and her hunger for freedom, her longing to be seen and her fear of exposure. The woman you desire is not a puzzle of contradictions. She is the embodiment of paradox, and the man who can hold paradox without retreating is the man who will always have her attention, not because he manipulates her, but because he resonates with her depth. The shadow of desire is not something to fear. It is the realm where real intimacy begins. When two people meet there, without masks, without manipulation, they awaken something ancient, something sacred. In that moment, her weakness becomes her power, and your curiosity becomes your strength. Remember this. The woman you seek to understand is not waiting to be decoded. She is waiting to be met, and that meeting does not happen in her body first, but in the unspoken space between your courage and her truth. Every encounter between a man and a woman begins with a projection. You see her, and instantly, before a word is spoken, your mind paints her with colors drawn from the palette of your own unconscious. You imagine her mysterious, pure, dangerous, nurturing, unattainable, but what you're really seeing are fragments of your own inner world reflected back at you through her form. She becomes a mirror, not of who she truly is, but of what you have not yet faced within yourself. This is the paradox of desire. What attracts you most in another person is rarely about them at all. It is about you. Every man who has ever fallen under a woman's spell has fallen in truth into his own projection. He is captivated not by her reality, but by the image his psyche casts upon her. It is as though the soul, in its hunger for completion, uses her as a screen upon which to project everything it has lost or denied. The mystery you feel in her presence is the echo of your own forgotten depths calling you home. Psychologically, this mechanism of projection is both a curse and an opportunity. A curse because it blinds you to the woman herself. You cannot love what you cannot see. An opportunity because through her you are given a map to your own unconscious terrain. When you find yourself drawn irresistibly to a woman's warmth, it may be because your own capacity for tenderness has been buried beneath years of restraint. When you feel disturbed by her confidence or independence, perhaps it reflects the parts of you that have been denied expression. And when her chaos unnerves you, It might simply be your own emotional chaos demanding to be acknowledged. This is where awareness transforms everything. Instead of trying to decode her like an enigma, you begin to decode your reaction to her. You ask, what part of me is responding to this? What hidden need, wound, or desire is she awakening? The moment you begin to ask that question sincerely, she ceases to be a mystery to manipulate and becomes a mirror for your own evolution. Sexually, the mirror of projection plays a profound role. Men often chase women whose presence evokes intensity, passion, even danger. Not because these women are inherently more magnetic, but because they embody a vitality he has exiled from himself. The woman who seems too much is often the embodiment of the man's unlived fire. He desires her precisely because she represents the life force he has long suppressed, in order to appear controlled, logical, respectable. She is his forbidden reflection, and the attraction he feels is his own disowned energy demanding release. This is why so many relationships begin in obsession and end in confusion. At first, projection creates magic. She seems perfect, luminous, divinely attuned to your soul. But eventually the mirror begins to crack. Reality seeps in. The qualities you once adored become the same ones you resent. The tenderness you craved now feels suffocating. The independence you admired now feels distant. You begin to see not her perfection, but her humanity, and for many this is where desire fades. But for those who understand the mirror, this is where real connection begins. When the projection dissolves, love can finally see. You begin to meet the actual person, not the idealized image you constructed. And in that confrontation, something remarkable happens. You are forced to see yourself as well. Her imperfections reflect your own. Her inconsistencies challenge your own rigidity. Her emotions mirror your buried sensitivity. What began as seduction becomes revelation. The woman before you becomes both a mirror and a teacher, reflecting the balance or imbalance of your inner world. Philosophically, this is the essence of human relationship. We do not meet others by accident. We are drawn to those who carry pieces of our unconscious selves. Every attraction is a signal from the psyche saying, there is something here you need to integrate. The woman you desire is not a random encounter. She is the embodiment of what your soul needs to remember. And so the purpose of attraction is not possession, but integration. She awakens the disowned energies within you, inviting you to reclaim them and become whole. In the deepest sense, this dynamic reveals the sacred nature of desire. What begins as a physical impulse is, at its core, a spiritual summons. You are being pulled toward the other, not simply to experience pleasure, but to encounter yourself. Desire becomes a form of self-knowledge. Sexuality becomes a mirror of the soul's longing to unite with its missing parts. The woman's mystery, then, is not meant to be solved. It is meant to be experienced as a reflection of the mystery within you. To live consciously in this awareness is to transform every interaction. You no longer seek validation, conquest, or control. You approach her with curiosity, not expectation. You understand that what you see in her, the light and the shadow, are invitations to grow. If she triggers you, she reveals where you are still unhealed. If she inspires you, she shows you what you are capable of becoming. The wise man learns to thank both experiences, for both are mirrors of his evolution. And when two people meet each other beyond projection, when they each take responsibility for what they see in the other, love ceases to be fantasy and becomes awakening. No longer blinded by illusion, they can finally meet soul to soul without the filter of need or fear. That meeting is not ordinary. It is transformative. It is the moment where desire transcends the physical and becomes spiritual recognition. So when you next find yourself captivated by a woman's mystery, remember, she is not the enigma. You are. Her beauty, her allure, her power, they are signals from your own unconscious, asking to be seen, integrated, and honored. To decode her, then, as to decode yourself, and the moment you do, you realize the truth that frees you from illusion forever. You were never chasing her. You were chasing the forgotten parts of your own soul. Every connection between a man and a woman is, at its core, a dance, a delicate and ancient rhythm between power and surrender. Most people misunderstand both words. Power is not dominance and surrender is not weakness. True power has nothing to do with control. It is the quiet confidence of presence. True surrender is not submission. It is the willingness to open, to trust, to allow life to move through you without resistance. When these two forces meet in harmony, attraction ceases to be a game and becomes an act of awakening. What draws two people together is never random. It is polarity, the invisible magnetism created when masculine and feminine energies meet. Every man carries both within him, as does every woman. Yet attraction thrives when these energies are expressed in their purest form, when the masculine stands firm in presence and purpose, and the feminine allows herself to flow, to feel, to reveal. It is not about gender roles or social expectations. It is about energy, the interplay of direction and receptivity, structure and emotion, consciousness and life. The tragedy of modern relationships is that many have forgotten this dance. We live in a time where power is mistaken for control, and surrender is confused with dependence. Men try to lead through ego instead of depth, and women resist not because they despise strength, but because they no longer trust it. They have seen too many false kings, men who demand rather than inspire, who command rather than embody. And yet within every woman still lives an ancient longing to feel the presence of a man so anchored, so aware that her own defenses can finally rest. To understand this dynamic, you must first understand what power truly is. Real masculine power is the ability to hold space for chaos without losing center. It is not reactive, not controlling. It is grounded awareness. Imagine a storm raging around you. Emotion, desire, uncertainty. The weak man tightens, resists, tries to fix. The strong man breathes deeper. He does not deny the storm. He witnesses it. He becomes the calm eye within it. In that stillness, the feminine feels seen, not managed, met, not manipulated. Her surrender is not a loss of self. It is a recognition of safety. And here lies the beauty. Her surrender calls forth his power, and his power invites her surrender. It is a loop, an energy exchange that nourishes both. When a man leads from consciousness, not control, the woman's body and heart instinctively respond. Her trust deepens, her vulnerability awakens, and her natural softness begins to emerge. This is not weakness, it is her essence unfolding, but she can only enter that space if she senses he can hold it without judgment, without the fragile pride that so often poisons intimacy. Sexually, this dance becomes even more profound. Every act of intimacy mirrors this polarity, the movement between giving and receiving, control and release. The most electric encounters are not about technique but energy, the feeling that one can let go completely because the other is utterly present. This is why confidence is so magnetic. It signals that you can guide the intensity of connection without losing yourself. When a man touches from this place, not to take, but to awaken, he ceases to be a participant in lust and becomes an instrument of transformation. But power without empathy becomes tyranny, just as surrender without discernment becomes self-abandonment. The balance between the two is delicate. The man who seeks to dominate loses the very magnetism he craves. The woman who surrenders blindly loses her soul. The purpose of this dance is not for one to triumph, but for both to transcend. Power and surrender, when integrated, dissolve into union, each completing and transforming the other. Philosophically, this interplay reveals something larger about human nature. Every psyche contains these two forces, the impulse to assert and the impulse to yield. They are the masculine and feminine archetypes within all of us. Growth occurs when we learn not to suppress one in favor of the other, but to bring them into dialogue, to lead with strength while remaining open to feeling, to surrender to love without surrendering integrity. In relationships, this inner balance becomes mirrored outwardly. The man who knows his own tenderness will not fear a woman's intensity. The woman who knows her own strength will not fear a man's leadership. The most profound relationships are not built on equality of roles, but on equality of consciousness. Both understand that attraction requires polarity and that polarity requires risk. Power must risk vulnerability. Surrender must risk trust. Each exposes the soul to the possibility of being undone, but that is the only way true intimacy is born. Without that risk, there is only performance, a simulation of love without its transformative fire. In this sense, power and surrender are not opposites, but stages of the same awakening. To lead someone into surrender is to lead them into trust, and trust can only exist in the presence of truth. You cannot fake it. The body knows, the heart knows, the unconscious knows. You either embody what you say or you don't. And that embodiment, your ability to be fully present in your own skin, is what creates safety. Attraction and reverence all at once. When a man and woman meet from this place, something extraordinary happens. The struggle for control disappears. The masks drop. The conversation between them is no longer verbal. It is energetic, instinctive, timeless. Power becomes service. Surrender becomes revelation. What remains is the flow of two forces, remembering they were never separate, only different expressions of the same current of life. This is the dance of power and surrender, not a competition, but a communion. It is what every woman secretly craves and what every man unconsciously seeks, to find the rhythm in which strength meets openness, and love becomes freedom rather than captivity. Remember this: a woman does not need your control, she needs your presence. And you do not need her submission. You need her trust. There is a hidden language that passes between two people, unspoken yet understood, a language of energy, posture, gaze, tone, and subtle movement. It is here, in the unconscious signals, that the real dynamics of attraction and influence reside. Words are secondary. A glance, a pause, a hesitation, an intentional presence. They all communicate volumes about desire, boundaries, and trust. The man who can read these signals does not need manipulation. He merely interprets the currents that already flow between them and aligns himself with their natural rhythm. Every woman carries signals of vulnerability and desire, but they are rarely explicit. She may smile in a way that softens her defenses, hesitate before answering, or shift her weight unconsciously when tension rises. These are not flaws or weaknesses in the negative sense. They are expressions of her inner state, echoes of her unconscious mind revealing what is alive, feared, or desired. To notice these subtleties requires a heightened presence, a willingness to perceive beyond words and appearances. You must become a witness, an observer attuned to the invisible architecture of her psyche. Psychologically, this sensitivity is a form of intelligence often overlooked, emotional and perceptual acuity. Most men approach interaction like a problem to be solved, a puzzle to decode. But human interaction is not mathematics, it is music. Each signal is a note, each gesture a rhythm, each glance a chord. To interpret these requires attunement, patience, and above all, humility. You must learn to read the spaces between her words, the silences that hold the real meaning, the contradictions that reveal the duality of her mind and heart. Sexually, these signals are even more charged. The slightest hesitation, a flicker of attention, a shift in posture. All of these reveal where her energy is flowing, what excites her, what frightens her, what she unconsciously seeks. The man who can notice these flows without judgment, without forcing them to conform to his desire, becomes magnetic. She feels it. Her unconscious senses that he is present not just physically but perceptually, emotionally and psychologically. This is attraction at its deepest level, the awareness that someone can see you, not the surface, but the currents beneath it. Philosophically, the practice of noticing and responding to these subtle signals touches upon the broader principle of synchronicity. Life constantly presents signs, patterns, and reflections, and the human psyche communicates in a language older than speech. When a man attunes to this, he begins to perceive not just her but the invisible threads connecting them, the energetic dialogue that precedes and exceeds conscious awareness. The signals she gives are part of this dialogue, invitations to align with her truth and perhaps to uncover your own. This is why mastery of observation is more powerful than coercion. Force can produce compliance, but it cannot produce resonance. The woman who senses your attentiveness, your ability to notice without judgment, your willingness to meet her where she is, will respond with authenticity. The interplay of her subtle signals and your sensitivity creates a feedback loop, a dialogue without words that deepens attraction, fosters trust, and ignites desire. Consider the role of mirrors in psychology. People naturally mirror each other's behavior, consciously or unconsciously. When a man begins to subtly reflect her energy, her pace, her tone, her gestures, he creates a sense of comfort and familiarity. She unconsciously perceives alignment, and in this alignment walls soften. But this reflection must be authentic, rooted in observation rather than mimicry. It is not a game. It is an art of perception, an understanding that energy is contagious, and alignment produces connection. Sexuality, when approached with this level of attentiveness, transforms. It ceases to be mere action and becomes an energetic conversation. Every look, touch, or pause communicates not only desire, but comprehension of her internal state. When you notice what she reveals unconsciously, respond with care and respect the signals of boundaries and invitation. Desire deepens naturally. There is no manipulation, only resonance, a flow of awareness, acknowledgement, and energy that feels inevitable. But this ability to read and respond to subtle signals is not passive. It requires courage and discipline. Courage because to notice deeply is to see what is hidden, uncomfortable, or challenging. Discipline because the signals do not always align with your desire or expectation. They demand patience, restraint, and self-regulation. To act impulsively or ignorantly is to disrupt the dialogue. To respond thoughtfully and perceptively is to participate in it consciously, turning unconscious currents into conscious connection. Philosophically, this teaches a deeper truth. All human interaction is a reflection of internal attunement. You cannot perceive another without first perceiving yourself. Your sensitivity, awareness, and capacity to hold space determine what you see in her signals. She mirrors not only her own inner state, but also your depth of attention and presence. If you are distracted, reactive, or ungrounded, her subtle cues will pass unnoticed. If you are attentive, aware, and present, you begin to perceive the hidden architecture of her psyche and the hidden opportunities for connection. Ultimately, reading subtle signals is a path to intimacy, not control. It is the cultivation of a presence so attuned that another person feels both seen and safe. Through this practice, attraction moves beyond superficiality. Desire becomes conscious and connection becomes transformative. The man who masters this does not dominate. He resonates. The woman who senses this does not yield out of weakness. She responds out of recognition of his presence and understanding. Notice her, truly notice her, in the spaces between words and gestures. Listen to the rhythm of her energy, the tone of her pauses, the flow of her attention. These are the keys not to control, but to connection, keys that open doors to desire, trust, and profound intimacy. And remember this, the subtleties she reveals are not vulnerabilities to exploit. They are invitations to witness, understand, and honor. In that witness lies the power to transform desire into something far greater, the recognition of soul in another. At the heart of every relationship lies a tension between the conscious and the unconscious, between what is shown and what is hidden. Most people navigate attraction blindly, responding to surface behaviors, social cues, and immediate gratification, never pausing to consider the deeper currents that govern human connection. Yet every woman carries within her a complex inner landscape, a network of desires, fears, memories, and archetypal patterns that shape her perception of men, intimacy, and trust. To truly understand her, to influence not through coercion but through resonance, one must learn to perceive these hidden structures and navigate them with both wisdom and care. Consider the archetypal patterns that dwell within her psyche, the eternal feminine, the wounded child, the anima in its myriad forms. These are not mere labels. They are living forces that color her perception, guide her desires, and shape her reactions. She may not be aware of them consciously, yet they determine how she experiences attraction, security, and passion. When a man meets her, he meets not only her persona, the outward self, but also the reflections of these archetypal forces within her. If he is unaware, he responds to her superficial behaviors and becomes lost in projection. If he is attuned, he reads the invisible currents that dictate how she experiences connection, desire, and safety. This attunement is the secret of influence that is neither manipulative nor coercive. It is the art of aligning one's own consciousness with the unconscious currents within another, recognizing patterns and responding in a way that honors both her integrity and your own. It begins with perception, noticing recurring emotional triggers, subtle gestures, tonal shifts, and relational rhythms. These are not weaknesses to exploit. They are windows into her inner architecture. Every hesitation, every sparkle of delight, every shadow of discomfort reveals an internal truth that, when perceived, can guide the interaction toward authenticity rather than conflict. Sexually, this insight becomes profoundly important. Sexual energy is the most immediate and intense expression of unconscious dynamics. A woman's desire, though expressed externally through words or gestures, is deeply connected to her inner archetypes. A man who understands this does not seek to force her compliance or attention. He seeks to navigate her energetic field, to meet her where she is, and to resonate with the hidden desires and tensions she carries. His presence becomes a mirror and a guide, allowing her to encounter and integrate her own energy rather than defend against it. In this dynamic, attraction is not superficial, it is deeply transformative. Philosophically, this approach illuminates a broader truth about human connection. All intimacy is ultimately a dialogue between consciousness and the unconscious. We are drawn to others not randomly, but because they reflect aspects of our own inner world that seek recognition or integration. When a man approaches a woman with awareness of her inner patterns, he is participating in a form of conscious engagement with the psyche itself. He sees her not as a puzzle to be solved or a conquest to be won, but as a living, evolving system, a reflection of life's complexity and of the forces within himself that are waiting to be met. This requires both psychological sophistication and ethical grounding. Awareness without restraint becomes exploitation. Recognition of inner patterns without respect becomes intrusion. The man who masters this path understands that influence is a form of presence, not control. He does not manipulate her anxieties to his advantage. He simply moves within the flow of her psyche with sensitivity, attuning his actions and energy to the currents he perceives. In doing so, he awakens her own capacity for conscious engagement, her ability to recognize and integrate her desires, boundaries and vulnerabilities. This conscious engagement transforms sexual attraction into something sacred. It becomes a meeting of energies, a conversation between the conscious mind and the unconscious forces that drive desire. When a woman feels understood on this level, her responsiveness is not mere compliance, it is resonance. Her vulnerability becomes a source of strength because it is offered to a presence that can witness it without judgment. Desire becomes a vehicle for self-recognition, and connection becomes a mirror of the soul. The philosophical depth of this understanding reveals that all attraction is, at its core, an invitation to self-realization. The woman's weaknesses, or what appear to be weaknesses, are not flaws to exploit. They are signals of her own unmet needs, her disowned desires, and the archetypal energies that shape her life. The man who perceives these signals consciously participates in a process of mutual awakening. He learns not only about her, but about himself, about the hidden currents within his own psyche, and about the delicate interplay of power, surrender, presence, and trust that governs human intimacy. In practical terms, this means cultivating awareness, empathy, and presence. It means noticing the patterns she unconsciously repeats, observing the subtleties in her body language and speech, and responding from a grounded, self-aware place. It means understanding that attraction is an energetic dialogue, not a transaction, and that mastery lies not in forcing outcomes, but in navigating the flow of human energy with intelligence, patience, and ethical clarity. Ultimately, the man who masters this does more than decode a woman's inner patterns. He learns to decode himself, and in doing so he transforms every interaction into an opportunity for growth, intimacy, and understanding. He recognizes that the unconscious is never separate from conscious choice, and that influence, when wielded responsibly, is not about domination, but about resonance. So when you approach another person, do not seek to conquer her mind or body. Seek to perceive her patterns, to understand the forces shaping her responses, and to meet her with presence and authenticity. In doing so, you awaken not only desire but trust, not only intimacy but self-awareness, and not only connection but transformation. The key is this: to truly influence. First see not the surface but the depths. What lies beneath is not a weakness to exploit. It is an invitation to recognition, integration, and the extraordinary alchemy of conscious human connection.